be back here speaking with all of you as members of the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators. And I so enjoyed my time in Savannah, and it's a pleasure to be here in Santa Cruz, California, talking with you all. And so I'm going to kind of breeze very quickly through this presentation, which could easily last into an hour and a half. I don't have that much time, and I want to make sure that there is plenty of Q&A for my colleague, John Fleskes, as well. So basically, what is creature design? Well, in industry terms, that means in terms of, say, movies, films, game design, and now also into fantasy, sci-fi publishing. A creature is the artistic depiction of a real species, or a prehistoric species, or an imaginary species, pretty much based on the former. And basically, the most important thing about creature design is the why of a creature. In other words, why or what a creature looks like is exactly what it needs to do. Sounds a little bit like natural history, does it not? All right, so on that premise, if you want to design an imaginary creature for Walt Disney Feature Corporation companies, or if you're adapting a real species like a tiger, a lion, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They're all creatures, and we all need to be cognizant of what role the creature needs to perform in the story, whether it is film, book, game, whatever, what have you. And all those media together, publishing industry, sci-fi, fantasy, and television, film, games in general, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, even walking with dinosaurs is under that category of creature design. That's all called transmedia, so that's what transmedia basically means, all kinds of things. Anyway, so this is a painting of two very real animals, and they are actually actual peacocks. Their names are Jade and Snow, and obviously the blue one is Jade and the white one is Snow. These are two peacocks that may still be living at the Oakland Zoo in Oakland, California. And the reason I'm showing you this, not just to also let you know that my favorite media is acrylic on gesso board, but to let you know that this is also, in addition to being, say, a portrait of two birds, in addition to being viable as biological illustration, is also something that can be used if one is making a movie, say a fictional movie, 3D characters, and their names happen to be Jade and Snow or peacocks. So this is an example of natural history illustration which can be applied directly to the entertainment industry. So all of you, there is a very marketplace for your skills, which is one of the main thrusts of my talk here, just to show you what can and is being done as far as natural history illustration in transmedia industry. All right, for example, I'm on the phone with my art director, and my assignment is to come up with a believable teasor. So there are two differences to keep in mind. There is fantasy or magical illustration from magical worlds, and there is then science fiction. In a magical world, say like Harry Potter, anything is fine. The rules are magical.
So we're making a slight adjustment to things, so we'll produce a better result.
Perfect.
One of these plates.
Here we go. Oh, get me a little louder. Okay, I'm a little louder now. All right, so my job here in this case, though, is to invent a believable sci-fi creature, something that we can think, well, maybe we could actually go to the zoo and pet this animal. You see the difference? And in fantasy, you can have chimeras, and people know what chimeras are, you know, in the truest sense, like, you know, Ariel, the Walt Disney's production, Little Mermaid, she's a chimera, correct? You know, the girl next door, and some kind of green fish. Stuck together. Okay, chimera. You know, classical griffin, chimera. Centaur from Fantasia, chimera. Okay, but this animal is not a chimera. This is a sci-fi creature. Another word for it is great creature. So I do a study of the essence of a feline, which I think a good example would be a African spotted leopard. So here is a mature mother leopard on your left, and its cub, which, if I see extremely accurate, should be probably about 30% smaller, but it's also showing, the progression from an infant to an adult. But basically, it's a study for myself, and this is also in my online course that was mentioned, Creatures of Amalthea. All right, so we have leopard and leopard DNA. The genotype is expressed in the phenotype, correct? And so, all right, good. So then we look at Protoceratops. This is one of my reconstructions for Protoceratops. I had it double checked by some of the profs at UC Berkeley Paleo department, and complete with hypothetical or possible quill-like feathers along its back and tail. So we have a female Protoceratops and her cub. I love drawing babies. Right. So you mix those two DNAs to create a hybrid, not a chimera. You come up with a T-Zord griffin. And actually, in this case, his cub, because in this sci-fi world, the males are golden with magenta feathers. And you can see that it has on its forearms from right here some wings. Now, it can't fly in a literal sense. It can leap glide, like a puma can leap very far, and then the arm feathers spread out and increase the leaf line. So that's how this animal moves. And then, of course, I have exaggerated the crest. Often hybrids such as mules or ligons or tigons, the offspring of the two closely related species, whether it's a horse and a donkey or a tiger and a lion, have something special beyond the parents. And it's rather wonderful. Like a tigon is a good deal larger than either of its parents, and mules are often exotically beautiful. So with mixing those two DNAs together, I've added some extra feathering on the crest. The head, if you notice, isn't exactly the same as a Protoceratops. Neither is the body exactly the same as a leopard, but the DNA is kind of merged to create this kind of a mule or this hybrid. So, and if you are doing these things for the movies, and they're animatable, this is what's important. You need to know your anatomy really well, because animation, by definition, you need to have it animated so that it can move. This applies both to 2D and 3D features. In the case of 3D, what is being built is an elaborate digital marionette, and that's what the animators move. In the case of 2D, you have an illustrator known as a 2D animator who draws the motion in series of cells. But in either case, the anatomy is really, really, really important. And I would not only be doing the side view, but also the top, the belly, the front, and the back, sometimes the inside of the mouth, whatever it takes. So, all right, this is a female. And the females in the world of Amalthea, T-Zors that is, are always black with sapphire feathers, and of course the males are golden with magenta feathers, and I can do that because I was the boss of that project. And so we go from there, from your anatomy, and thoroughly understanding the anatomy, to creating a conceptual illustration with all kinds of action and turning that anatomy around in all different kinds of poses. And then I was able to do this because I have spent endless hours in zoos and museums drawing baby cats and also looking at little cats and just trying to wrap my head around it. And I still do that to this day and go to bed worrying about aspects of anatomy that I'm not understanding completely, and that'll go on for the rest of my life. I am positive. So anyway, here's another example of a T-Zor leaping. This is based on young cougars playing, and I wanted to figure out more about the armpit area. And all this is very, very helpful to whatever studio or whoever you are working for. All right. Here are some of the associated species that appeared in that particular illustration. And you can see in the flying animals, there's DNA mixed in together. You have Lepidopithecus, which is a prehistoric mammal. There are elephant shrews, there is pterodactyl, there is bats. There's a baby. And it's interesting, when you do baby animals, it's a good exercise because baby animals tend to be cute. Cute goes over really well in designing characters, and also it's a good exercise. You can do a juvenile character and have it grow up to an adult character. That's often, as you know, Bambi doesn't always stay a little fawn. He grows up, becomes the great, stag of the forest. All right. So here is a mood painting. This is a western gray fox, and I'm just showing you this aspect of creature design. That color is very emotive. It makes you feel a certain way. In Bambi and Brother Bear, other productions, I didn't work on Bambi because I was very, very old by now. But color is extremely important in conveying emotion. And in this case, this is an illustration which is illustrating a particular poem, a very ancient poem, Song of Songs, Catch the Foxes, the Little Foxes That Spoil the Vine. It's a love poem by King Solomon. And basically the warmth and the magentas and the reds reflecting off the grapes onto the fox are adding to that almost magical feeling of what it's like to feel in love in an exotic place. Even though this is California, even though this could conceivably be a California vineyard, but then people go there on the honeymoon, so I suppose that's appropriate. All right, so moving on very quickly. And again, that previous painting with the fox, that was done on masonite, gesso, and acrylic. So here is a traditional work. This is drawn initially on hands-on tracing paper. I then Xeroxed it with a very good photocopier, not a printer, a photocopier, like if you go to the Kinko's or whatever. But this is a Konica Minolta, so it's better than Kinko's. And played around the density line. Okay, great. Then I scanned it into Photoshop, and this is painted in Photoshop. This is from my book, The Katuran Odyssey. These are the original digital files. As you can see, there is space at the bottom. That's where the text goes. And also, I did this in an almost Vista Vision film aspect ratio. I chose a film aspect ratio, which means that's the format you see in the movie theater, because with the intention that this book could become, a movie, and I wanted anybody, or any art director who saw it, to be able to say, oh yeah, this works as a film. This book was done in about 2004, and it was at that point a little bit ahead of its time. It's an experimental book, which kind of bridges the gap between movie and graphic novel, and it's going to go into a reprint, but augmented reality is going to be sifted in, so it's going to be even more of that trans publication. So that's something to keep in mind: augmented realities and virtual realities. And that book was a little bit ahead of that time, and we knew it, but now it's about time for it to go on to its other permutation. But needless to say, this is a daytime scene. The hero is a little ring-tailed lemur. If you see that leatherback turtle there, he's cringing there on top of it. Ring-tailed lemurs do not belong in the middle of the ocean. He's going into outer space, and we have all these carnivorous animals, both prehistoric and contemporary, mostly carnivores, very interested in him. He is not happy. It does not get better for him at night. But he does survive the journey, and he continues on his journey. And here he is on one of the main continents of this world, the planet Keturah. And he is here on his friend the Quagga, at the bottom left. They're going on an auspicious journey. Everything's nice and rosy. Remember, keep in mind color. These gigantor glyptodons. No glyptodon was ever that big. I mean, they got big, but not that big. That's my movie, so. All right, so very rosy colors. upward and onward towards the right. In the west, for whatever reason, it's very intuitive that when you're going on a journey, especially in movies, you'll see this. You usually are going to go to the right. See how many times you catch that. All right. So here's earlier on in the story. Note the gloomy colors. Oh, it's not so good, is it? And it's still going to the right. But unfortunately, Katuk has been banished. He's in the basket, hanging down underneath the moa, and it's going down. It's like, uh-oh, this is not good. All right, so now here is a blend between, say, a huge just division screen presentation and classical symbolic illustration. Do you see the cartouches in the corner? And you see that's a whole little, each cartouche has 2 animals in it. Does it remind you of the Peaceable Kingdom? That's intentional. That's been done almost since the caveman days. If you go, you look at psalters, you look at the main manuscripts, you look at things, the manuscript, especially if you look at, say, mid-Victorian illustrations, the works of Art Nouveau in particular, Klimt and Luca, you see a lot of that kind of symbolism superimposed on the main illustration. The main illustration basically is an animal paradise. It's a mystical illustration where everybody is happy and there's endless resource and no one ever eats each other again. All right, so we don't have much time. A long time in the studio, pretty close by, if you go up north. All right, just a little movie we saw. Here, anybody seen this movie before? All right. And it's still going on. Keep going on. It's more like a TV series now, since the acquisition by Walt Disney Companies. All right, so I had just finished storyboarding at Industrial Light and Magic the first Super Bowl Clydesdale commercial. You know, horses playing, Clydesdale's playing. Okay, that was the very first one. And the Clyde horse was Anheuser-Busch, and ILM wanted these storyboards to be really fancy and nice, and done in 2 days. Anyways, I was like dead. I was so dead. And by the time I was done, and I was waiting for my art director, was at my desk, waiting for my art director to do my next assignment, which I think was Dragonheart, and that was lip syncing Draco's some animation on Draco and also his mouth lip sync. And I was drawing, just doodling, and this is what happened. It's just a small drawing, pencil drawing, because that's how I was feeling. So when I myself had done Chang or chosen to be the core starting up for the Star Wars art department, the prequels art department, and they moved us up to the ranch, Skywalker Ranch, for security. I brought this little drawing with me and just stuck it on my bulletin board next to my drawing table while I was working. And so George liked the feeling of those little booby eyes, and that started something. And Jar Jar Binks looked like many animals in his development. His character took a 1.5 years to develop, because he was an important one, especially since his character was intended for small children, which George knew was going to be a big bulk of his audience, not the initial Star Wars audience, which in 1977 was usually 18 years old and up. But Star Wars by itself can be very scary for little kids, and he knew that that generation was going to take their children to see the prequels, and so I knew this character is a safe character for children to take refuge in, because if he survives, then anybody can survive being, shot at and all that space stuff that goes on. But anyway, so these are very fast drawings. This is marker and pencil, and not so great drawings, but we didn't have time to grade. We just had time to get the job done. And so more aspects of his development, until finally, 1.5 years later, there you have him. And so I did that portrait of Jar Jar. George said, yes, that's the one. And then I did the full-length body and features it all. And you notice anything interesting about his legs? Anything at all? Those that do that? Well, there's that. But those of you who do a lot of human figure drawing, see anything that's slightly off? Very short thighs? Indeed. And because I wanted to give him, this was one of the first fully realized digital character that had to carry a movie, not just be a little, special effects group. And I wanted to add in extra alienness so you can see that this was not copied from a human being, right? I want to put another animal in it. So I had been looking at a lot of emus, birds, and in birds, their knees are way up close to their bodies, short thighs, short muscular thighs, so that Jar Jar walks like this. He can't help but walk like that because the way the legs are. So that's something to keep in mind when you're designing for animation, when you're designing characters like these. You guys have such an advantage because you are already, many of you, not all of you, have a good grasp of biology. So use those biological skills to put in creature design. Your skills are practically and immediately adaptable to this industry. There's a whole other industry for you to get into. Pretty cool. All right, I mean, my background, I majored in vertebrate zoology with an emphasis in paleontology. I had very little art school, about a year's art school. And that was just kind of squishing in as quickly as I could, but I still have a little money left over for college. All right, that was in the olden days when you did have money left over for college. Okay, so anyway, these are the orthographics I did for all the creatures that I designed for the prequels. I had to then go back and draw the orthographics for production being done in Industrial Light and Magic, which is the special effects and production company for Lucasfilm. Okay, so for all of this, I had to do all of this. And in addition to this, I also did the musculature. But if I add this onto this PowerPoint, which is already long, this would be like a 10 million hour PowerPoint. You would not like that. Okay, so here's anti-Jar Jar. This is Sebulba. He's mean and cruel and awful. Anybody know? I'm sure you can guess what animal influenced this stuff? Yes. And it's specifically, again, once more, the Oakland Zoo. It was nice and close, and you can get to the animals really close to the Oakland Zoo. It's nice weather. They aren't hiding because they're cold in San Francisco. He was based on a dromedary camel that lived at that time at the Oakland Zoo. But unlike the dromedary, Sebulba, if you sit down at this table, is this tall. He's little. And he has a very bad attitude and a very bad self-image, which translates to this nasty personality. And maybe I would be too if I was the color of an Easter egg. Anyway, he is an animal that walks on his hands and drives with his feet. So here are his orthos that were sent to ILM. So you can imagine the engineering of this animal. I think I caused them nightmares over there. And so here's his skeleton to help them out. And they developed the rigs, the vectored rigs, which are digital skeletons. And the realistic skeleton, that's what's called the slave skeleton. So a rigger will put together to look at the bones there and see where all the joint pivot points are. And then he will create a vector skeleton. Then you have a modeler that will model the slave skeleton, all those bones digitally around it, and connect them to the vectored joints. Then you have the same thing happens with the muscles. This is where you have a big budget, and you want things to look really real. And then on top of that, then you put the surface, which is texture mapping, the color, and all that. That is why movies are so expensive. All right. Here are some more of the pod racers and their skeletons and such. And some more, and I can go into more detail, but I'm not having too much time. This particular character is a nod to Steven Spielberg, who is one of George's good friends and work colleagues as well. This is actually the same character that drove the mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and this was kind of an inside joke to Steven Spielberg. So you see your characters in my movie, haha. And if you notice, you see how he isn't exactly symmetrical. You know, he's kind of a little bit. Because when you are modeling a creature, say you're doing it in ZBrush and stuff, you're going to get a perfectly symmetrical creature. Great, that's great. Except that in reality, nobody is perfectly symmetrical. And so you just, after you've modeled it, just tweak one side of it. Otherwise, you're going to get Stepford creatures, and you don't want that in the movie. And yes, we have this guy, and he's just crazy, goofy, and I love his little knees way down there. The initial idea came from my good friend, Ian McKay, who was a virtuoso designer and artist, and all around together, just a lovely person. And then he said, okay, Terryl, here, and make it real. And so I tried my best, and it was so fun. This ridiculous character. And the insides are sometimes funnier than the outsides. All right. Two-headed announcer started out like this Siamese twin person in Mobius costume, which I put him in the Mobius style costume because George Lucas really likes Mobius. And said, well, this is a really cool creature, except I'm afraid it's going to, freak little tiny kids out because it's too much like one of the Siamese kitten, and which is kind of bizarre. So that was too scary for little kids. So he turned it up more like this. So I guess he's less scared. To me, in my mind, this is actually a more typical alien than the other one. So here's some more designs for Jedi Council members. And then here are some recent works for Lucasfilm. This is, again, another pod racer pilot. This is Team Toe Pagilis, catching some rays. Here are some model sheets of Team Toe and his wife, Sela. Then here is a concept illustration of 3 of those pod racers, including Team Toe, celebrating their survival of another race with tea and cookies. Now you can see more about Star Wars universe. You can see that Team Toe, who is on the right, relaxing in the blue Bermuda shorts, he's got Khalidi's monkey, in his face a little bit. He's got camel-like legs. The one in the middle, he's obviously got some influence from seahorses. Clegg Holdfast on the left. Diabag gazelle, Garanet gazelle, things like that. So all of these animals, and we did call them animals, even though they're technically make-believe creatures. I always call it creatures, whether they're real or imaginary animals. All are influenced from nature. Very important. Again, fish, as you see, swimming into the underwater to the Dungeon City. We have, this is probably my most chimeric one, the OPC killer, and we also did, thought about all the backstories, all the life histories and such, so we can do our own National Geographic of Star Wars magazines. And Periscope sea killer, be sure that you eat your food carefully before you swallow or it might chew its way out. Star Wars is supposed to be kind of like, Here is my favorite one that I designed. This is the Aqua Sondo Monster, the biggest one underneath the water that ate all the other ones and almost ate the set. And it's, like twice as big as Godzilla, so there. And anybody have an idea what animal was the most influential for this one? It's a land animal. Panther. It's a tiger. Because its personality is like a tiger, it's at the top of the food chain, it's sneaky and it's lazy. And I was inspired by Apocalypse Now. To me, one of the most frightening sequences in any movie that has ever been made is when you have the GIs in the jungle and they're hearing crap, crap, like this with their rifles, and I think it's the Viet Cong. And it's a tiger. Oh, it's so frightening. And I always remember that. So a lot of my first assignments were to populate Mos Eisley and Anchorhead on Tatooine, not with just classical Star Wars characters, but brand new ones. It was a way of George breaking us into making sure that our designs were matching with the feel of what had been done before. And here we have another one, and the grayish animal who is talking to Anakin's mother and Anakin. This is before you any actor for cast. her name is Mrs. Ketwall because she's married to Mr. Ketwall, who made his first appearance in the cantina scene in Star Wars, the special edition. So here we go. Here's Mr. Ketwall, and in the special edition, you only see his head, but I did design his entire body. And so here's some more recent work for Lucasfilm. Here's his entire body. Here's his anatomy. Great. Okay, well, how did I arrive at that? Obviously, I was inspired by tapirs and elephants and dinosaurs. And yay, Canada, the Edmontosaurus. It's a hadrosaur. And so here is some of my reconstructions for that particular animal. And as you can see, it had direct bearing on Mr. Ketwall. And Ketwall species are the animal wranglers of Star Wars Universe. So if you want an AOP, or if you want a Rancor monster, which is an awful idea all the time, they will get you one. Okay, book jacket design. She was inspired by bearded dragons and fringe lizards. And there's another, this is a Java cutie, so yeah, drawing a human figure is important to the creature designer. And I think I was listening to the B-52s that day. Here is another little dancer for Java's den of sin and iniquity. Here is Java 30 years in the past, so he's not quite as decrepit. Here is how he gets around. You can see his anatomy. Yeah. Outside. Here is his father. This is Frank the Hut. I did not name Frank the Hut. George Lucas did. And he is in the prequels. You just have to watch for them. Like little cookies. This is Frank. And you can see that he's got a little more dignity than his son, and he's more wrinkled because he's older. And there is Gardula the Hut. That is his mother. And those are little pictures of Java as a young Java Hut. And we all know that Java later on captured Princess Leia and put her in a Frank Franzetta bikini, and it looks kind of like what his mother liked, and I think Java had issues, so it's not cool. Here's a Guzark. He uses the dark side of the Force. This is not a good creature to be friends with. And we have a Sith Hound, also likewise dark side. This is using Doberman pincer DNA and Gavial crocodile DNA to get this animal. You can see that they're not half of one or the other. It's kind of all mushed together. And I'm thinking of the intent. What does this animal have to do? What is the role in the pit story? Just like animal has to fulfill its natural history on planet Earth, these imaginary animals have to fulfill their natural histories in their worlds. Sign-Luth, it's always, when you're doing invertebrate characters, arthropod characters, always a challenge in the faces because, as you know, those of you who are etymologists with illustrators, they have very rigid faces, and most of their acting is gestural. So often we cheat by giving them kind of vertebrate-like jaws and kind of reptile-y or expressive eyes. Yes, it has pound-pound eyes, but it also has eyelids and wrinkles. I hazard none of those type of animals. Arthropods actually exist, but it looks cool in the movie. This is a Terrantech Rancor. It is a type of Rancor that uses the dark side of the Force. Star Wars universe rules. If you use the dark side of the Force, your eyes get red and you get pointier. Now let's switch gears. This is Brave. Totally different aesthetic. Very soft, very Celtic. These are very early on in production. Here are some montage put together by a little bit further development, and all that design work also reflects on the other species like bull squirrel. We have model sheets here of faces. This is some of them. We have Eleanor. She's looking pretty much by now. Her proportions, as you can see, are now a more normal bear proportion because no bear really has wasp waist Victorianness. And then Mordor, the mean bear, lost more hair and got more harpoons stuck into him. And then we have some of the other animals. Okay, so these were done for Brother Bear, for Walt Disney Feature Animation. I was hired to take things all the way from real bear, real anatomy, and all that, down to the studio release character. So we have Kodiak / grizzly bear here, and even though this was a 2D feature. Oh, by the way, these drawings also, since Disney owns Pixar, Pixar also used these for Braid. Okay, so anyway, back to further there. So we have the realistic drawing, we have the flayed, well, we take the fur off, you can see the main muscle groups, and then the smaller drawings show the fur blocks. Because this is 2D and you have to animate furry blocks as opposed to software, each little tiny hair that has to be recreated for each movie, it seems, nowadays. All right, so more of these. I did about 50 sheets of these. More details of the paws, etc. You know, is it inside, is it outside, what parts of the body. I did a lot of also design on moose. And as you can see in the right-hand corner, you can see I'm getting closer and closer to the studio release of their characters. So you use your biological knowledge, your anatomical knowledge, and then you edit to stylize. And how do you make moose talk? Like that. Except with Canadian accents. Beauty, eh? Okay, and which is easy for me to do since I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for quite a bit. And when I come down from there, people say, "Are you from Canada?" No, I'm from Oregon. Well, isn't that in Canada? Some people think that. But for the Vancouver is driven, so we all kind of sound like Cascadia. All right, so anyway, Tales of Amalthea. I'm on the horn with art director, and I'm working out details of a hero character who is 12 feet tall. And there's been lots of hero characters. We've got, based kind of inspired by animals. We have like simian characters, we have reptile people, we have cat people, but we don't see this done too much with ungulates, so I wanted to do something very different, and I love drawing ungulates, my favorite animal family to draw. And so basically, what happens when you give sheep guns? Well, this kind of thing does happen. So we have Maha, he's a warrior, he's 12 feet tall, his civilization has about the technology of ancient Rome. In other words, pretty much everything we have except electricity and the internal combustible engine. They have weapons of war, they create art, they, have trebuchets, catapults, all kinds of wonderful things. So anyway, basing that design on the largest of the antelope, which is the giant eland, which is 6 feet tall at the top of the withers. It's a huge animal. Most people don't realize that antelope is as large as a bison. It's extraordinarily beautiful as well, and endangered, of course. I also did reconstruction of one of the species of Sheepotherium. Sheepotherium, as you know, is a genus of prehistoric giraffids. And rather than being tall and lithe as modern giraffes are, it was more massive and broad. And the ossicones, which are horn-like functions on the head, or rather moose-like. And I thought that was pretty cool. So, and then there's speculation, well, did it have like a little trunk or something? Well, nobody really knows except the Sheepotheriums. So I was playing around with that. So basically, okay, we've got the eland, we've got the Sheepotheriums, and I was looking at bipedalism. And here's a good example. Here's a theropod. This is Peloponnemus. And okay, well and good, except that theropods in general, their backbones are parallel to the ground, as in most birds, which are modern theropods, surviving theropods. So I'm thinking of all that stuff. All right. But since his default position is bipedalism, I had to make sure that his spine was curved like ours, as curved, unique to human beings, so that his default position is bipedal, leaves his hands free to do stuff with, and then with the large, heavy horns, those are counterbalanced by the dinosaur-like tail, and there we go. And of course, his musculature. His hooves are drawn out into fingers. He doesn't have any thumbs, but it's zygodactyl, so like the two main fingers and two off the back, the two claws off the back. Zygodactyl like a parakeet. Can manipulate things. Here's a younger version. His anatomy. Here are more species related to him. Collectively, these are all called styra, And maha is a styra, which is called a melander, and this is a styra called a hadax. And obviously you can see that some influence by some prehistoric ungulates there as well. All right, so here's a model sheet. Here is an action sketch of these animals collectively trying to drive off this big green thing. All right, so back to UC Berkeley, and I am working with a prof now on a book about Triceratops. This is a reconstruction of the head of a cast that's of a young juvenile Triceratops that's in the rotunda of UC Berkeley's Museum of Vertebrate Paleontology. And the most recent hypotheses established by Mark Goodwin and Jack Horner are that Triceratops was a juvenile form of another dinosaur called Torosaurus. And Torosaurus, there is a larger one at bottom, a long crest, and another juvenile in one of the growth stages of horns. Here's Triceratops. But for all of you who love Triceratops, don't worry. It was described in the scientific literature a lot earlier, so Torosaurus is a grown-up Triceratops, and it will be called Triceratops Torosaurus adult morph. So you can rest assured it's not going to go bye-bye like Brontosaurus did, your favorite. All right, so this is where you have dinosaurs are not found all nicely in general, nicely, neatly spread out for you to find by digging. Oh, there's my complete skeleton. This is that cast. That's the that reconstruction I did. This is how it actually exists. So this is involved in UC Berkeley Museum of Paleontology. Here is the nose horn, and these actually are not fossils. These are the actual bones. You touch that, you feel like you're holding a million years of life in your hands. It's really incredible. So not fossils. Amazing. That's the brow and the jaw, both sides, the teeth. And this is how now what they've deduced how dinosaurs really did that. This is what dinosaurs really did. They tried to audition for movies and such. So we have the Thorosaurus, then we have the and then we have Captain America, and then where would the movie land be like if we didn't have the incredible Hulksaurus? And for all his mightiness, he still can't scratch his chin. It's sad. Here's a bunch of doodles, kind of getting to those ideas. We've got, there they are, they're the amazing Avengosauruses. And so now I'm going to move on very quickly into something that the Vikings weren't afraid of much, but they were afraid of this. And these are initial sketches. First of all, I should qualify that my favorite thing in the world are horses. I love to draw horses. I love to ride horses. The horses are cool. So, anyway, so more doodles. Here are some of my studies of horses. This is an Andalusian. And then Vikings would have been familiar with these ancient breeds, which are the fjord horses and the Icelandic horse, very much still being bred in live and well today. More equine studies here. Again, here is a reconstruction of Hippitydon, a North American species. I just loved the rostral bone and head of this animal. So I thought, well, this might be interesting food for thought. Then we have the Zygolodont above, and below we have a contemporary bottlenose whale, not bottlenose dolphin, but bottlenose whale. They're very odd and interesting. But I'm looking at all these features, of all these animals that I've just shown you here, reconstructions, and then I come up with what they were afraid of. This is a huge water horse. It's carnivorous. They believed that this animal existed. It's called the Habost. Here is the anatomy. All right, so I'm wanting to put this together in an illustration, so I'm composing the shot, thinking like a movie person. Composing the shots is the same thing you do when you're composing any kind of composition of illustration, especially if it's a narrative illustration telling a story like this. And so I was drawn to the one on the far right because It was a view of one of I always remember one of my horses rearing up when she wasn't feeling very well and screaming in pain. She was okay. The vet came, she was fine, but it was something I never forgot, because here's a relatively small horse at 14 hands tall, but when she was on her rear legs, that's a gigantic animal, especially when one that's hurting. So there we have the finished illustration. It's on the left, and there's a close-up on the right. And so basically, it's kind of showing what the Vikings would be seeing before they all, perished. And then we're also able to see ourselves, in context of this animal rising out of this tidal wave, and just you can see how large she is by looking at the size of the belugas and the sperm whale by her. Here's a real chimera. Basically, if we did a real chimera, this would be where the male sits on top of the female because they have huge territory, and a la anglerfish, it's hard to find a mate, so they do it that way. I would explain more about this animal, but I know time's precious. And its only natural predator are hippogriffs, which are carnivorous horses again. I guess I'm on a carnivorous horse kick. This is for a book in process called Bestiary. This is a Chinese fish cat based on jaguarwandis and obviously catfish. Calapus, which is a medieval feathered-like wolf animal that was supposed to be found in the Balkans. Celtic black dog. Puppies are cute, but don't mess with it. And we have a North American griffon, this time based on the puma species, bizarre puma species. The cactus cat, North American puma, a bizarre type of lynx or bobcat that lives in the southwest. People believe these things. No. An Arcadian sphinx. And a little more call out position. Axe handle hounds. This is, again, people believed in these things. It was thought, the lumberjacks used to spread these stories around that when the axes went missing, that the axe handle hound was stealing them because it was like saying, oh, I'm rescuing my own kind. We have an Egyptian sphinx. And here are call-outs. And we have the hillside gouger. And the male, basically one side of the body, the legs are long, the other side of the body, the legs are really short. It has to go around a hill, and the males are oriented clockwise. If you look counterclockwise, when they eat up all the grass on the hill, they have to get off the hill and go to another hill. So they have to get together, convenient for many reasons, to get baby ones, but also to travel, like drunken sailors, like this. And so that is the end of my presentation. And I can take some Q&A, but also, though, first I want to introduce my colleague, John Fleskes. And he is the owner of Flesk Publications. And what's so significant about what he does is that he publishes the work of the best sci-fi and fantasy illustrators working today, and also each year publishes a juried annual called Spectrum Fantastic Art, which has become, over the years, the go-to reference volume for art directors in this genre, both for animation and movies and games, and also for publishing, for example, sci-fi books, book covers, jackets and all that kind. And he, through his years, he's gotten to know many of these top illustrators and their stories. And wonderfully enough, he is located here in Santa Cruz, so it worked out really well. And so I guess what I'd like to do is for you to come up, and if you have whatever questions that you have for both of us would be great. And also I have some questions for you maybe to kick things off. The other thing I want to let you know is that you've also brought some books.
Yes. There's a book that I published that has Terrell's artwork featured in it, and I brought a copy for everybody to give out for free. So.
And I guess what I could do to ask you, how did you get into publishing, and to tell us more about Spectrum, and also, since you know many fantastic illustrators, artists, and their stories, is there anybody who one path to follow regarding breaking into this industry, or are there many paths? I think that everybody here probably is pretty curious
Yeah,
about
a
it.
lot of good questions. First one is, I've never seen Terrell speak before. I've had dinner with you and we spent time together. You're a great speaker. I've been publishing since 2002. Okay, sorry, it's making. Okay. I've been publishing since 2002. I've always loved art and art books, comics especially. I grew up with them. And I was a collector, and there was books on artists that I wanted to see that just weren't being done. And I decided to just make my own. I didn't expect this to be a business. I didn't expect it to turn into what it did today. It wasn't really planned that way. But I did a book on Franklin Booth, who's an illustrator from the turn of the early 1900s, who I just adore. And I enjoyed the process. I did it again the next time, and the next year I did more and more. And I was working at a corporate job that I just, I really didn't like being there at all. It was creatively just draining. I was pretty miserable there, and I really wanted to. Another thing I should say is I don't like being told what to do. That didn't work out very well there. And so, but I really wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to start my own business, and I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about, and I chose books. And another reason for it too is, as a father, I have my son here with me too. I want to be a part of his life, and I don't want to be somebody who just goes and disappears for work all day. I wanted to be able to include him in what I did and be there for him as well. So that's another big reason why I wanted to do my own business. But choosing something I was really passionate about and making it work was really the incentive to get going with publishing. And I've been doing it since 2002, and I took a pretty big pay cut from the corporate job to do this, but I'm 1,000 times happier. So it's just really the way to go. You asked a question about the different paths and personalities. Well, last night what we were talking about is, well, when I started doing this, extremely introverted, pretty shy person, and I thought there's no way you can really be successful in business if you have that personality. And what I came to learn was a lot of business owners are introverts and generally are not really outgoing people, but they make it work, and they work hard, and they're really smart, and they make good decisions, and they don't give up, and they turn it into something. It really proved to me that it really doesn't matter what your personality is or what happens to you in your childhood or what, there's always a way to make it work. So it's not, you don't have to be a loud, boisterous person. And this is something we were talking about last night when you were telling me how George Lucas selected a lot of people like you, just really great, kind, generous people who have this ability to create. And Ian McKegg, who she mentioned earlier, is the same exact way. Just a wonderful human being. And I think that's what makes the arts so wonderful, is that people in this industry really want to do it. They love it. They're not doing it for the money. It's because they want to create and share with other people. I want these books to get out there so people can see the artwork and see what you do and what these other artists do. And that's my incentive. And so, if anything, it's not a job for me. I'm more of a caretaker, I think. And it's a community, and that's what makes it important to me.
For those who aren't familiar with Spectrum, what is that, and what opportunities does that create?
Yeah. The Spectrum is a yearly jury annual. Terrell was one of the judges last year, and artists submit their works in the fantasy field. There's book categories, there's advertising, institutional, even unpublished, so that students and people new to the industry can participate. And the 5 judges go through and anonymously, you just pick the ones that you like. And then at the end, I tally 3 or more votes gets into the book. It's been, I just finished, actually yesterday, Spectrum 23. I'm sending it off to the printer after I'm done here. And the book comes out every fall, and it's become the best known art annual that comes out every year. And it has the largest circulation. It's in every bookstore, and art editors and people in the industry use it to look for new talent to hire for their jobs. And it's something I care deeply about, because it's not only is it getting out to fans, but it's also getting out so that these artists can potentially get work out of it, and they can make a living in what they're doing.
There's also a convention that's related to it.
Every April next year, we have a show called Spectrum Fantastic Art Live, which is the live version. And we have 3,000 people arrive, and we have about 200 artists set up at the booths. And we do workshops, and Terryl will be a guest next year, along with Ian McCabe and a number of other artists. And James Gurney as well. And it's a way for us to all get together and share our love for the community. And it's a pretty special thing, yes. It's in Kansas City. So it's we pick it because Spectrum was founded in Kansas City. It's where the founders are based out of, and it's proven to be a good city to us. It's good for us there. What were some of the other questions?
Oh, yeah, as far as, since you know so many artists in the industry, is there, as far as when people break into the industry, is there any one who, if you could have, are there many paths? Do you have an example?
Yeah, Terryl and I were talking about this last night, because the two of us have something in common, that we've never looked for work before. I've never looked for a job. I've never had an interview in my life. And I've been working since I was 8. I made my first dollar when I was 8. I used to make things and sell them door to door to the neighbors. And I've been working ever since that age. I had a job when I was 12, 14, and when most people are graduating college, I already had 15 years of experience. And I had no college experience. I never went to school. Well, I went to high school, but I was just doing my thing. And every opportunity that's come my way, I saw it and grabbed onto it. And everything's been offered to me. And then with my own business, then I made my own path and my own way. My whole family has their own businesses, so I think I was geared toward that from a young age. But there's a lot of ways to be successful. There's no one way. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't matter what your personality is, you can make it work. And a friend of mine, Bunny Carter, who's the director of the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, she has speakers come and she says, you know, they're always so nice. They encourage people and they tell them that it's great and it's easy, but it's really not. And she wants the speakers to get up there and tell people how hard it is. So listening to Bunny in the back of my head, I want to tell you it's really tough. There's nothing easy about this, especially in the arts. And you have to be really diligent about it. And I think the people that don't quit are the ones that really make it work, because it's really easy to quit. This is a tough business. And if you want to make a living at it, you have to be really just, yeah, you have to really push hard to make it work. And as artists, artists tend to be a lot more sensitive than most people, and they tend to take criticism pretty tough, and they sometimes let it stop them doing what they're doing. So it's really just ignoring that criticism, especially with online now. There's so much going on. You got to really be good about ignoring that and just getting through it, and keep focusing on what you're doing and not letting anything stop you. I think that's probably the most important thing when it comes to being successful.
Questions from the audience?
So Spectrum, you're publishing books, obviously the feature design area, and you mentioned graphic novels. Tell us more about the different categories in the fantasy art world, and how does it connect to the scientific illustrators who love to draw and might want to move into the fantasy world?
Okay. honest, I'm not real knowledgeable about that, but I can give you some examples. And that would be with the fantasy artists that I work with that work in film. And most of those artists, like Terryl and Ian McKay, who we've mentioned a number of times, they, or anyone who's working in animation especially, like I just did a book with Dyson Suzuki and Robert Kondo, who did The Gamekeeper, that was nominated for an Academy Award last year. They spend a lot of time at zoos and with animals to study and learn the process, especially with flow and how in movement, the study of nature, and most of these people are nature lovers, and they spend a lot of time out in the woods. But it's so imperative to understand how the way nature works, to communicate that into film and also to tell stories in comics. And a lot of people who don't have the resources to maybe travel and go out and do those things study a lot through film. And film is also a good resource as well. But I think if you want dynamic movement in your works, you really need to study nature in person as much as you can.
So I've gotten a few of these Flesk Publishing books, and they're amazing for their reproductions. I'm just wondering, do you have to spend a lot more time and effort to get some really great reproductions off of the artwork you're scanning in, or?
Well, I think the difference, the way I do things is I don't, I do self-imposed schedules, but I break them all the time. So the nice thing is I'm the boss, right? So I don't have somebody who tells me, well, it has to go to the printer today. That's the schedule, and too bad we have to get it done. I'm late all the time. And it's because until that book is done the way I want it to be done, I just don't put it out. And actually, I'll give you an example. I'm putting the Spectrum book. There was an artist who did photographs for the award winners. And a couple of the artists sent me selfies that they did with their phone. I said, that's not acceptable. We can't do that. You know, you have to go and find someone who has a real camera professional. And so I put the book off for a couple weeks to make sure we get this one picture better in the whole book, because I don't want the book to come out with this selfie from a cell phone. So it's really just making sure that you put in the time, and I'll push the schedule to make sure I get what I want. And actually, another example, I should have brought this book with me now that I think about it, but William Stout did the murals for the San Diego Natural History Museum. And I did a book on all the murals. And they sent me the photographer, staff photographer at the museum, went through and spent a couple days, photographed everything, and sent me the photographs to use for the book. And I got them. I didn't like them. I drove there and re-photographed everything myself. And then I did the book that way. So I'm pretty stubborn about what I expect, and I put in a lot of effort. And from a business standpoint, that didn't make much sense because it cost me time and energy and money to go and do that. But once the book's out, it's done. And it's your only chance to get it right, and it has to be right.
Yeah, I have to say that the books that I have from your publishing is some of the most beautiful books I have. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just had a question about like rights usage, and I
Yeah.
guess kind of for both of you. I imagine you're putting things in your books that are maybe Star Wars or from another company copyright. So how does that really work?
Oh, well, for example, like for Disney or for Lucasfilm, I have to ask them for permission. And in some cases, it can be a very lengthy process. For example, with Lucasfilm, they're actually real quick. But then they're a smaller company than Walt Disney, the Walt Disney Company. So even though Walt Disney technically is their owner, yet Lucasfilm still operates independently. It's just that they have to be owned by the greater umbrella of Walt Disney companies. But to get permissions, for example, in my book, Science Picture Design, there's supposed to be a chapter, a Disney chapter. Well, there's going to be one in the next printing, but because even though I started a year and a half prior to the books being published, that is how long it took. It had to go to press before we got permission, so we said, okay, we'll put them in the second edition when it comes out. But Disney took a very, very long time because they are so huge. So, but yes, when you work for another company, the characters you design typically belong to them. It's usually to do that for that particular purpose only, and they charge a fee per image.
Back here.
I think it's a question for Terryl. What was, if you never applied for a job, what was that point between finishing school and then being discovered?
Well, as it's usually somewhat unique for each person. For myself, I was still in school and I was hired out of school. But how that worked was that most of my background, as I said, was in the sciences, and then I spent a year and a half divided between two different art schools, just as majoring in illustration. Most of my credits applied from Zoe major, obviously. And for the Academy of Art College, it wasn't the Academy of Art University back then, it was really accredited. And there was only 2 campuses opposed to the entire city of San Francisco, as it is now. Each year, in order to graduate, you had to partake in a student show. And art directors from various places would look at what the graduating class was producing. And 2 of the art directors from LucasArts, which back then was the video game department of Lucasfilm, saw my work. And I did not have portfolios or images of monsters or space monsters or imaginary animals at all. It was all real animals. And they hired me to do creature design because their reasoning was, if this person understands how real animals, which are actually far harder to draw than imaginary things, because imaginary things have nothing, there's no piercing feature. It always kind of looks good because, no, that's wrong. Piranhas don't look like that, right? And you can't say that unless it's for a particular production. We have to stay on model. But they said if she can do real animals and knows the anatomy and how they move, then creature design is a no-brainer. That's how I was hired. And I think each artist has a different story. And as you were saying, from that point on, I didn't have to look for work. Didn't mean I was always continuously employed because of the nature of the business, but the connections you make from other connections. So it's like, oh gee, I'm working on this film and I'm going to be done most likely done in less than a month. Then you tell your friends, I'm going to be done in less than a month. Do you know of any openings anywhere? And that's kind of one example of how those things can work. I think that
Oh,
yes.
You showed a lot of quick sketches in your slideshow, and I was just curious, do you arrive at those via layers and trace or non-photo blue or anything, or are those mostly direct sketches?
Well, let's see. The sketches, for example, or that I showed you initially, like little teasel drawings, or the ones of the styrene pencils. Those were drawn on hands-on tracing paper because for some reason they put pencil, even though it's a nice brand of tracing paper. I think, I don't need to get precious about it, which takes some of the cell pressure off. And what I used was, I buy these things at Walgreens. It was a Technicolor mechanical pencil with 0.5H or double HB leads, and holding my pencil way up here as opposed to the deck grip down there, so that it would be loose and just drawing that way. Now, I also will sometimes use the Coal Erase indigo blue, and sometimes the Carmine. Those are traditional animation pencils, which are really nice, sharp point, and they're really nice and forgiving. And there's something psychological, and myself and my colleagues have discussed this. What is it about drawing the Coal Erase indigo blue pencil, which kind of makes everything okay? The blank page. And then once you start just filling on those, suddenly, oh man, it's not perfect, but it's really make it that. So that is usually how I start out, because we all face sometimes that weird, even though we love to draw and art, there are these like moments, and I don't know where it comes from, but it does, and those are the tools that can help
about something you said regarding how you hire out the school based on national performance. And since you're working in the current illustration project, it seems that since there's so many game studios now, that they hire based on if your style matches what they're currently doing more so. And if you could share that with so much of that in the past, do you guys want to comment on that?
That's a question we always are talking about. What do you think?
Well, I think having the diversity to,
Yeah.
he's asking about your style. Should you suit your style to what the studio wants rather than your own individual style, basically? I think you want to do both. Craig Elliott, and you know Craig? So Craig Elliott has an artist who I work with. He works with Disney. He's done a lot of films with them. He can tailor his style to match anything and anybody. But he also has a very strong individual style. So I think it's important that you can show people that you have that range. But I think it's also important that you maintain your own style too, because at some point, someone's going to look at that style and maybe they'll want to turn that into the style that everybody else copies. So I think it's really good to do both.
I think an example for me was Brother Bear. I showed, went all the way from the realistic grizzly bear all the way to see on film. And so, yeah, being able to see your foundation, your anchor is those fundamentals of art, anatomy, light, color, and all that. And so it's being able to adapt and be able to maintain who you are. Because the danger is if you're only one particular style, then you get lost in the crowd and you devalue yourself. And it's also not just on a morale, personal morale thing, but it's like an art director can say, oh, we want someone who can draw in this style, so we'll hire so-and-so, because they'll draw that style, but do it for cheap. And then all of us, it trickles down to me, to you, all of us, when that happens.
Right here.
Sort of related, but diversity of story. In fantasy stories, you end up with sort of similar archetypal plots being variations on a theme. I work with a lot of informal STEM education stuff, and we're looking at how to communicate science to broader audiences. What kinds of story diversity are you guys interested in?
It's hard for me to answer that question because I publish art books and I'm not involved in the films or games or things like that. But I guess I can only answer it in regards to what I do, which is with the publishing. I'm looking for someone who's very individual and unique. I don't want someone who looks like somebody else. And I guess we were talking a little bit about this last night, and there's two key combinations that I'm looking for in an individual who I work with. And the first one is really good to work with. I mean, that comes before anything else because, and then that might be a good artist, someone who's unique, because I won't name, but there's artists out there who nobody will work with, who are stellar artists, but no one wants to touch them. And sometimes fans at shows will ask me, hey, you got to do a book with so-and-so. And I go, nah, we've got other stuff going on, but in my head, no publisher wants to work with this person. So I think that's really the combination. I know it doesn't really answer your question directly, but I'm looking for strong individuals who are good to work with.
I think with regards to story, one thing that I have found is that you've got story you're telling is actually one story told many different ways. The archetypal story, which is basically journeying through life or through a situation. You start out one way, there's some conflict that goes on along the way, and then there's a resolution to that story. But it's the variables that you use, which can be many ways. For example, we have a story of the three little pigs. The main thing is there's a danger, which is the big bad wolf. So what are they going to do about it? Well, one little pig tries this, and he works really hard, and he makes a good product that saves home, and he survives, and he ends up turning the tables on Big Bad Wolf and having wolf stew. Obviously, this is fantasy story, but you can think about, in nature, where you have these birds maybe all hatch from the same nest, but one does something which is not forward, is cool, and then the other one, because it has some extra asset that it has or it doesn't have, it does go on to survive and build a special nest or whatever it happens to be. It's still telling a story that we maintain our interest, that captivates our imagination. I'm thinking, both in documentary style things. Why do we look at documentaries that are really, really interesting, whether it's Walking with Dinosaurs or it's about Tesla? A story about Tesla is a story of his life. What did he go through? If we're looking at Walking